welcome to this new kind of cool little thing we've done called Mixtapes. We get the wineries and winemakers to talk to each other and have a few questions. Nice little initiative by the marketing guys, North South Wines. And what I'm going to do is just introduce myself. James Rayner from North South Wines, covering the Southwest area for independent retailers and wholesalers. And then what I'll do is I'll ask Rod, if you just give yourself a little introduction, and then on to Brian and Ashleigh as well. So Rod, after you.
Sweet. Welcome to sunny Hawke's Bay today. It's not a particularly hot day, but so Hawke's Bay is based on the east coast of New Zealand in the North Island. So we're sort of one of the drier, warmer parts, and pretty low rainfall. So I moved here in about 1993. And been making wine ever since. Moved here to be close to grapes. So we run a business called Tiwonga Estate, which is based right on the coast. And so I started that in about 2006. We produced around 50,000 cases, and quite a few of them are made from organically grown grapes.
Nice. And how about you guys over the water?
Across the ditch.
You want to introduce Paxton?
Thanks for having us, guys. My name is Brian Lamb. I'm the Sales and Marketing Director, sitting here with Ashleigh Seymour, our winemaker. Briefly on Paxton. Paxton started in 1979. David Paxton's owner and founder. He's a local McLaren Vale farmer. Started in the almond business and sold his small almond cracking business in the late 70s to buy his first vineyard in 1979, an 80-acre block here in McLaren Vale. Since then, the business has grown, and we have about 200 acres of vineyards here in the Vale across 6 different sites. He's a great grower by trade, viticulturist. He's a rather renowned viticulturist here in Australia. He's worked on all sorts of projects with all sorts of companies over the last 40 plus years. The wine business started with its first vintage in 98. And we're growing. We're about a 35,000 case wine business, and we're also still a significant grower business. We make about 16 to 17 different SKUs of wines, and everything we converted to certified organic and biodynamic starting in the early 2000s, and finished our full conversion of all 6 sites and 200 acres in 2011. And that's a short, brief
synopsis. Nice. Cool. Well, covered a few things there on the introduction. What's the weather like over there? I know you've already said it's
today. Yeah, it's going to be 30 degrees today, but really cool nights at the moment. We've had some quite cool weather, so acids are really holding on, and ripening is very slow. We're probably 7 to 10 days behind last year, which is great. Beautiful flavours developing. It's a fantastic time at the moment, I think. Yeah, it's going to be really good quality fruit this year.
Cool, excellent. So just to recap then, so kind of Rod, you're covering just Hawke's Bay and that particular area, and Brian and Ashleigh, you're covering McLaren Vale and that particular area as well. There, do you stretch any further beyond those areas with your winemaking at all for those particular endeavours, or is it just literally focused in there? So Rod, over to you.
Yeah, we do. We do bring a little bit of fruit from outside the region, but for Tiwonga Estate, it's all about Hawke's Bay. Yeah.
And what about you, Ashleigh?
We as Brian mentioned, David's grape growing business is focused in McLaren Vale, and we only use estate grown fruit. So at the moment, that's all McLaren Vale fruit from quite a few different areas over McLaren Vale, but based focused on this region only at the moment.
Cool. So here's a bit of a nice loaded question. So how you kind of you skirted on it, Rod, a bit before. How did you get into the business of making wine? Let's keep it to like under a minute. How did you get into the business of making wine?
Mate, I was working. I recently dropped out of business, doing a BCom, and I was working in restaurants and bars and whatnot, and in the city, and and started writing wine lists and serving wine and learning more about wine, and got invited to a winery on Waiheke Island, just out of Auckland, for a tasting and a bit of a famil. And it was like, it was like someone opened a window, the sun came up, and I realised that what there was involved in winemaking. So I'd come from a farming background. My parents, funnily enough, were sheep farmers, so I probably thought I was always going to be a farmer. And when I realised that in the wine industry you could be a farmer but a grower and talk about food and see people enjoying it, and how wine becomes part of kind of some of the most memorable and interesting moments in your day or night, I was in. And so I got a job. I sent out 85 letters asking for a job. I got 84 back saying no thanks, and one saying maybe, come and see us. And so I went and saw the fella, and he took me on, and I worked my ass off as hard as I've ever worked for about a month.
Ashleigh, how did you get into winemaking?
My dad was always really passionate about wine, not in the wine industry at all. My parents were both teachers, but in every school holiday, we pretty much got dragged around Australia to visit every single cellar door that was sort of open in the 90s. And I think my love just grew from there, and we always had wine at the family table. And I knew I wanted to do something science-based, but lab coat and fluorescent lights wasn't really what I was keen on. And I found out about winemaking, went and did the gap year, travelled Europe, visit some wineries around Europe, in Croatia, around Prague, Italy and France, and was still really passionate about it. So moved to Adelaide in 2005, I think, and started winemaking.
Cool. Nice backgrounds, guys. Did either of you do any studies at particular wine universities or something along those lines? Or there's loads of those little things around the globe, but did either of you kind of do? Rod, did you do any?
Yeah, so like I said, I had a reasonably checkered career at university, but after working in the wine industry for a little while, I got there's a Latin name for it, and I can't remember what it is, but it's like a backdoor entrance into a postgrad course at University at Lincoln in the South Island. It kind of says, well, I got a letter of support from my boss at the time, and so I got let into the postgrad course and was like an A student when I was doing something that I was into. It was amazing. Yeah. It was like being on holiday and just getting paid to sit around and learn about wine. It was wicked. And then probably more importantly, I travelled to do a few vintages in Europe as well, and that's school, when you turning up and seeing how wine kind of intertwines into the social fabric of the village or the community, and how much it means to people and families and all that sort of stuff. That's probably that's probably as important. But the university really, they weren't going to give me the keys to the door until I had done some risk mitigating study about bacteria and yeasts and wine quality and all that sort of stuff. So it added a lot, but I think experience and time in the saddle's probably ultimately been more valuable.
Yeah, cool. And I think Ashleigh, you've touched on you've made wine in various places or experienced that. But did you do any? You did mention you did some specific studies, but was it a particular university? Because Rod, you said you went to Lincoln. Where did you go, Ashleigh? Did you do any?
I studied enology at Adelaide University. Okay. Which is probably the best university in Australia for winemaking, and one of the most historical. With a pretty hard course, I think, in the beginning for a lot of people. We started with about 50 people, and the first year was chemistry, biology, physics, statistics, all that fun stuff. And I think after the 4 years, we graduated with about 10 of us that made it through. Yeah.
Cool. And you've both, again, like I said to you a minute ago, you touched on having made wine around in various places. I heard a rumor you've done some Italian winemaking.
just a little bit.
Yeah.
I've done a vintage in France in Condrieu Saint Joseph in 2009, and like Rod said, you know, that really opened up my mind to how wine is so integrated into the life of the village, and everything is sort of built around that, and just that real community family atmosphere around the table, and the whole village getting together to help harvest the grapes, and then a big meal afterwards and all that sort of thing. And in 2010, I went for what I thought was a 3-month vintage stint in Tuscany, and moved back to Australia last year after 11 years there.
What happens when you're in Italy? I speak from personal experience. My father's Sicilian, so it's kind of, you know, I'm kind of like, I can see how Italy can grab you by its talons and not let you go.
It can, very much so.
So what was the winery there?
Avignonesi in
Lovely.
Montepulciano. So, yeah, mostly Sangiovese was what we did, a little bit of Merlot, Cabernet, a little bit of whites, and some indigenous Italian varieties as well.
And your pronunciation is perfect. Rod, what winery you did some stuff in France as well?
Yeah, probably the most formative was at a place called Louis Max and Louis Saint Georges, and they were a negotiant, but they had their own vineyards as well, and so we were doing some really sparky, some Grand Cru, some Premier Cru Burgundy,
Great.
red and white. Yeah.
Listening to what you're doing now, doesn't it? Really, I guess, in many respects. What about? So, just to highlight on both of your roles within the business as such, I kind of know a little bit in terms of Rod's role within his business, as it were. Could you just highlight that and kind of like encapsulate your roles? Because you're obviously making wine, but is there anything else more than just the making wine that you can kind of expand on? Just kind of like expand on what it means, really. I guess over to Ashleigh on that one. Let's just highlight Ashleigh.
You know, as you know, probably a lot of wineries are small family businesses, so you have to wear a lot of hats when you work for a small company, and in whatever kind of realm, I suppose. So over and above making wine, there is, you know, helping Brian out with marketing, you know, sticking my head in the cellar door and making sure everybody there knows what they're talking about, and, you know, HR, and, you know, we've got organic and biodynamic certification, so there's all the bureaucracy and paperwork that goes with things like that, you know, keeping track of everything that happens in the winery. You know, there's lots of things, getting out on the road and doing tastings. Not that that's happened so much in the last couple of years, but looking forward to doing a bit more of that in the upcoming months after vintage. But yeah, you know, you've got to wear a lot of hats, and they don't teach you all that at university. You sort of have to learn it along the way, and managing people and all those sort of things that you know, are part of the job. But yeah, it's not exactly what you went to university for, but it's good fun learning all the different facets of a business and how it runs, and financial reporting and all that sort of stuff that comes into it.
Yeah, I think it's almost intrinsic, isn't it? Otherwise you kind of got your blinkers on a little bit. It can be quite an immersive experience. I imagine making wine as just a sole thing. When you actually look at the whole spectrum of roles within that, it does kind of like broaden your horizons somewhat to how a business runs, really, I guess. And Rod, what you're kind of in the same way, you kind of, I believe you manage many different other areas within, not just the winemaking as such.
Yeah, I mean, Ashleigh's nailed it, really. That could have been my day. That could have been my working week. Yesterday I was donkey deep in a BioGrow audit. We were being audited for the winery. So talking about everything that encompasses. And this morning I was giving a talk on compliance to our new lot of interns because our compliance manager couldn't be here. And the day before that I was on a finance committee meeting, for God's sake. They shouldn't be letting me near anywhere near that. But you got to know what's going on, you know. So and then I was designing harvest T-shirts with someone yesterday morning, and out in the vineyards in the afternoon, and you know, it's it's just varied.
Is that what you're wearing, Rod? Is that the Harvest T-shirt?
It's actually the Harvest T-shirt's going to be this, but in a circle with something in the middle, maybe a pair of snips or something. No, this is the Wild Song T-shirt. I thought I'd better brand up. In fact, I always wear branded t-shirts to work.
Very nice.
Yeah, there you go.
Yeah, it looks good, man. Good looking label.
We love it.
Send one to us.
I think the great thing about being, a winemaker is you're never just sitting on a desk. Yeah, there's some days where you got to sit at the desk and do the computer stuff, but other days you're out in the vineyard, you're out in the trade, you're in the winery, you're fixing a, leaking hose in the wastewater system.
Yeah.
There's a lot of fun and a lot of different things to do.
And Brian, you kind of like muck in with everything as well, don't you?
Yeah, I mean, look, I sell and market. No, so I mean, I do.
You sell and market.
I'm a lot involved in.
He does the odd pump over.
I do one token pump over per vintage. Part of my contract. Now,
Gotta make an appearance.
generally I'm on the road all the time, but I've been grounded. But generally, I'm 4 to 6 international trips a year, and then 4 to 6 domestic trips, and we're always creating new products. So I sort of spear up the new product design, label design stuff, and range design, and all the trade partner relationships with retailers, importers, and distributors is a long list. So
never a dull day. Never a dull day. And you serenade people at the winery as well, don't you? I've heard.
When was the last time what was the dinner me and David had with you? Was that down in
Jersey? Yeah.
Yeah. For those who doesn't know, Brian moonlights as a very talented musician, actually, in a number of different bands.
I don't know about talented, but I give it a crack.
That's another conversation for another day. Right. So here's another loaded question. We're looking at loaded questions on this Mixtapes project. So I'm gonna throw this question out to you. So, what areas of winemaking excite you, and do you have a philosophy on winemaking, and has it evolved over time? And Rod, over to you on that one. So, exciting you in winemaking and philosophy, and has it evolved?
Mate, we over here at the minute, and I know it's the same in Australia, the most exciting thing to happen from a winemaking point of view is probably the challenge of what natural winemaking's brought to the table in terms of people trying to do less. And we're not massive fans of throw shit at the wall and see what sticks. We love the rigor of figuring out how to do something by doing very little that and actually make something better. So we are totally into the idea of what the discussion is around natural winemaking and all that sort of stuff, and it's made us look at all our process and think about why we do. We still do a lot of the same stuff we were always doing, and I don't think you'll see us lurch too much stylistically, but I think our wines will be better for the challenge. So that's the most interesting thing in terms of what's happened in the last 12 months. And then what was the second part of the question?
Do you have like a philosophy and on winemaking? Has it evolved?
Yeah, funnily enough, it's evolved along those lines for the last probably. So when I used to work for Villa Maria at Vital Estate, and we produced there a really strong range of technically really sound wines that I was super proud of at the time, and were really awarded, and we had some really good results around the place with those wines, and I think of the time they were where the industry was in terms of clean and perfect and pure and technically balanced and polished and shined up and all that sort of stuff. But I think in terms of where we are now and what we're excited about in terms of making wines, and it was a few years ago that was a real kick in the pants about 5 years ago is we've just moved away from inputs altogether. We did it because our idea is that great wine should taste like where it comes from, and it should be memorable. Like there should be something about it that makes you think that I've had this before. You know, when you taste it, when you have it the second time or the third time, it's like, oh, we've had this before. You know, there's something memorable about it in terms of the flavour or the mouthfeel or the texture or whatever. And so to determine up the volume on that individuality, you've got to get rid of the noise and the clutter and the background, you know, the background noise. So, and for us in winemaking, that's inputs and it's chemicals in the vineyard. So that's where our organic journey started in the vineyard. It's where our no input, low input winemaking started in terms of finings and all that sort of stuff on the way through. And it's now with this kind of push from those sort of more craft beer kind of sensibilities around natural winemaking that we're starting to say, okay, well, so what about finishing? Like, do consumers expect it? Can we get away with it? Do we actually, where we're sitting at the moment is I actually prefer a wine finished rather than unfiltered or, I actually prefer the purity of a wine that's been finished in a sort of more conventional way compared to a wine that's been left and is a bit more mucky. But then I love it when it's a little bit, when the wines have some shape to them. It's like, you know, you have an individuality to them. They're not too polished up. And so particularly with the Wild Soul range that we're going to taste today, it's near enough to zero input, and no finings, no polishing on the backside. You know, it's just more honest. Yeah, you sound like a cliche sometimes, but it is a more true representation of what we're actually getting from the vineyard. So, so stylistically, we come from technically really carefully put together, polished wines to something that's not as beautiful, but you'd look at it every day and see something different. And it's more interesting. It's the kind of face you could stare into for years, you know?
Cool.
As opposed to something
that's got a gleam about it. Yeah. So what about you, Ashleigh? What areas of winemaking excite you, and whether you've got a philosophy and has it evolved, basically?
I think Rod really hit the nail on the head there in terms of what's going on in the natural sphere. Look, I've worked at a vineyard for over 11 years, biodynamic, organic certified, 175 hectares. We did 100% natural ferment on all of those, products, and very little additions of products and things like that in the wine, just a little bit of sulfur and bentonite in the whites. I really think that, I suppose that whole natural wine terminology covers way too many things, and it could mean so many things. It's really easy to make, a preservative-free wine if you use, 150 winemaking additives. On the other side of it, I'm a little bit more, in the camp where I'd prefer just to use a little bit of sulfur and not use anything else. Mm-hmm. I really like the natural feel, like what Rod was saying, just really having that the vineyard coming through in the wines and that sense of place. I think that is sort of my philosophy. Wines, keep it simple, but it needs to be clean. There's a lot of wines out there that I think get tipped down the sink because they taste like,
sink water.
I've got some probably quite choice terms that I won't use on this, but, can be pretty stinky. And my sort of feeling there is that if you're going to make a wine like that and it ends up not being drunk or tipped down the sink or only drunk by such a small niche of people that actually enjoy it, all the resources that you've put into that product the water in the vineyard, all the work along the way, the pruning, the everything, the work in the harvest, getting that wine into bottle is all wasted. And so therefore that wine is, less environmentally friendly and sustainable than a conventional wine at that point.
Completely understand. Yeah. It's got to have a commercial value to it as well, hasn't it? In some way, it's got to be a viable proposition. You can't. And it's a nice idea to kind of like have something that you do on a vintage by vintage basis that's like esoteric and out there, but actually to be able to kind of like get a work in progress that keeps moving nicely through the vintages and kind of develops almost as a project. Then I can imagine that's kind of like growing your own, working with your own baby and letting it kind of develop and grow and mature. And it's right. Okay, so.
Yeah, that's right.
Go. So you said go for it.
Oh, just, we are experimenting. I'm quite excited about experimenting with some amphora and some different sized oak casks and things like that. In the past, Paxton's been very focused on the 225 litre Bordeaux barrel that you can see behind me, but we're, trying to move away from that a little bit and really mix it up a little bit and, test out some exciting new things, but keeping it clean is the number one priority.
Yeah. And so here we go. So we're going to focus just a few questions, like nice simple questions on grapes and regions and that. Simple question for you. What's your favourite varietal to grow and why? Rod.
Oh, look, I would drink more Chardonnay than anything else, probably, if gun to my head. I drink it summer, winter. I've probably changed in terms of my preference, more one end of the spectrum to the other, from a stylistic point of view in terms of what I like to drink and what I'm impressed by in terms of other people. So I guess it's Chardonnay. We probably do internationally, we probably do a better job with our Syrah, but Chardonnay's got to be in Hawke's Bay for sure.
Okay. What about you, Ashleigh? What's your favourite varietal and why?
Look, after 11 years in Tuscany, I don't think you can take the Sangiovese away from me.
You're getting a lot more of that in Australia, aren't you? I mean, it's been there for ages, but it's becoming more and more prevalent, isn't it?
Yeah, I mean, Mark Lloyd from Corel brought it in, I think, in the 80s. So it has been around for a while. I think it's trying to find its feet. It's being planted in more different regions, Central Victoria, some more regions of South Australia as well. I think it's such a plastic variety. It's so malleable. It really changes in terms of vineyard site, microclimate, etc. You can make so many different styles of wine from it. It's really versatile, but you really do have to find the perfect site for the style of wine that you're looking for. So it is a big challenge on that front.
Yeah.
But people sort of maybe get the impression that Sangiovese is sort of a bit wishy-washy and a light style wine just because of the colour. But, I've made some Sangiovese with tannin that, can compete with, some of the biggest wines you've ever tasted.
I can imagine. So what about blending, Rod? When you blend, what are you considering? What's the most important thing you're considering if you blend, when you blend? It's gone. You're always thinking about it a lot. Ashleigh, when you blend, Ashleigh, what's the most important thing you're considering?
Look, it can be sometimes a little bit about practicality, but the number one part of it is definitely just how it feels, the shape on the palate. It's usually, when we're blending wines, it's usually a time that possibly the nose of the wine isn't the most important perspective. You've got to have the right elements there, but, it's a wine in evolution that's not necessarily at its peak, but you've still got to start making those blends. So the really important thing for us is just that the shape and the feel of the wine on the palate is right.
Okay. And so, Rod, thanks for rejoining us. Blending. What's the most important component when you blend? If you blend, which I'm sure you do, what's the most important component for you when you blend?
That's a really tricky question, actually, because I'm thinking we only make one blended wine, and it's in terms of it's a red. We muck around a little bit with some small batch things, and if we're blending within a variety, we're really just trying to create something that whatever the. So you're only blending if you can make something better, right? So you're trying to fix what you see as a shortcoming, or extend something that you really like across a bigger volume, or something like that. So for us, our most exciting, our best wines we don't blend. It's our single expressions, and we'll blend, I guess, same batches within a vineyard. So it's just to big up what you love about a wine. If there's something there that you like, and it's a characteristic that you like, whether it's aromatic or textural or flavour, in terms of and what you think is the best part of it, it's just figuring a way to elevate it. Elevate it or lengthen it.
Okay, so if you were to use going back, Ashleigh, to you, you got commercial or wild yeast, essentially. Flipping to yeast now, obviously. What's your view on the use of the two? Because I think we talked about wild yeasts a little bit, kind of skirted on the subject, but we were talking just a minute ago. We were talking about polished products and clean products. So is that the key component here when you're talking about commercial and wild yeast? Is it the thing that kind of dictates when you use let the thing just go for it? Is that, are we open to a little bit of trial and error there, or is it that's going to be all right with that particular varietal or that vintage or whatever?
It comes back down to having as much control as possible over the process, and knowing what's going on at any particular time. When you're making what we call, in our opinion, natural wine, low intervention wine, you really need to know exactly what's going on at every particular step, because you can't just throw an enological product, at the wine if, something goes wrong. You've really got to start from planting the vineyard, deciding, what variety is going to get planted in what particular plot, and working all the way down from there, the pruning that you're doing to get the right wine style, all the other interventions during the growing season in the vineyard as well, to get that fruit perfect. So it comes in and it doesn't need to be, chemically altered. And then it is just being really scientific, I suppose, about knowing what's going on, getting the microscope out, making sure you don't have too many, crazy funky yeasts growing in there when you're doing natural fermentation, making sure you're onto each step of the way, getting things done timely, not leaving things around in, tanks that aren't full, and all those sort of things along the way. You've really just got to be completely on top of it and with a scientific brain, but at the same time sort of let nature take its course, but guide it along the way.
Yeah. And Rod, are you kind of on a similar page with that in terms of...
Yeah, I mean, actually just reminded me of something we were talking about. I'm 50. I'm just over 50, just 52, 3. My mind's going, my brain's going, and I now look at those choices around what's planted where in a really different way than I used to, and taking on a new vineyard is not. It means different things now to what it meant, 20 years ago. So it's kind of it's a bit like the day you realise you're never going to play for the All Blacks. You know, it's a really tough day, and it's like if I went and planted a vineyard now, I'm going to be seeing the best of the fruit when I'm 70. You know, and so you look at the potential of sites in different ways, and you take over sites where people have made decisions, and you're the benefactor of good planting decisions. And because you fix, and to Ashleigh's point, you fix stuff in the vineyard. If you've got a ferment that always goes stinky because it's got nutritional issues, then you don't fix that in the winery by chucking some nitrogen supplement in. You fix it in the vineyard by putting compost and plucking more leaves off, or doing whatever you need to do to make it better out there. So, what was the question?
Commercial versus wild yeast, basically, when you kind of don't want to use.
Yeah. So just to Ashleigh's point, we wild ferment. You know, there's so many answers in discussions like this. We had our BioGrow audit yesterday, and if we want to export wine as organic into America, we have to use a really constrained number of yeasts to get access to market through Canada into America as organic wine. And it's like, you know, so natural, like not using any yeast is a much easier decision around being a global business, because it just gives you, it improves your access to markets where they put up these barriers and what it means. So we, by preference, use no yeast.
Yeah.
We use yeast as a curative if we got a ferment that doesn't start for whatever reason.
Gotcha.
We go into harvest hoping to use none, but willing to use some when needed. And so we're really careful, same as Ashleigh, that we, again, it's not haphazard and accidental in terms of having a healthy ferment and watching a natural ferment start and develop in a healthy way. It's really good timing. It's knowing when to get some air into it. It's knowing what populations of what you've got.
Yep.
But ultimately it comes back to fixing your problems back in the vineyard. I think it's you know,
cool.
There was a point Ashleigh made, and it's a really good one.
Cool. All right. Let's. This is a question for Brian. Hi.
Sorry, we've got a bit of annoying light happening now.
No, it's perfect. It's lovely. Kind of sun-draped barrels in the background. It's lovely. What does the UK market mean to Paxton, and how does it differ from your domestic market? It's really kind of quite again, I love these loaded questions. They're great, but yeah.
Well, I'll put that back on you, James, as our UK sales guy. You tell me. I'm kidding. Look, all exports export markets are important to us. We have the UK has always been an important market for us here at Paxton. David's first endeavor. I've been with the company 7 years, but previous to that, really the first endeavor into exports was the UK. You know, there's a love and appreciation of UK culture, and you want to sell wines. You want to sell your wines to people in places that you like and appreciate, and know they appreciate what you're doing.
Yeah.
We always feel that about the UK market. So yeah, it's very important to us, and working with you guys over the last few years has been great. I think we're chipping away at it. You know, we see the opportunity there. I mean, I think the organic angle has been a big driver, and we're seeing more action with Ocado and these channels, and you can tell me more on your end as well. But surely the UK has always been a top priority export market for us.
Cool. And what about Rod, for you? How does the UK kind of what does that symbolize for you as a positioning in globally? You know.
Yeah, I mean, selfishly, as a 15, 20 years ago, looking at the wine through the lens of a small business owner, it was like there's places I really want to go in the world and spend time and have a reason to go there and form relationships with people and places, and the UK has always been the centre of the wine world, in so many ways, and so to sort of set up a business that's so dependent on doing well in export and not include the UK, you know, when there's so many influential people over there and so much interesting stuff going on, like when you're at the bottom of the world, we just look at what's served up on a plate to you guys in the trade over there and every day, and just like the tastings you can go to and the events that you can go to and the wine that's poured over there. It's always been part of our strategy, and it was the first place we wanted to do well. We've ended up selling more wine in America now than we do in the UK and Asia. Like, same deal. I mean, getting to travel through Asia and see your wine and what it means to people over there and understand how they drink it and showing them new and interesting ways to use it is it's really cool. Yeah.
Mixing it with Coke, I expect, is probably what yeah. Let's Cyril with Coke.
150% humidity outside, you know, tastes all right.
Exactly. If they're going to buy loads of it, Rod, it's what matters. Right, okay, so let's touch on climate change, because it's kind of like affecting everyone in different ways. And I think it's particularly acute, obviously, in your neck of the world, Ashleigh and Brian. So what implications is it having currently on how you're operating the business, and you know, and have you kind of like have you worked on plans and future proofing stuff over the next few years? And is it particularly acute in McLaren Vale? I can imagine it's probably, like, my perspective is it's slightly different there, but you have had some issues recently, haven't you? I think that you probably had to kind of address. Yeah,
look, harvest dates have been creeping, you know, earlier every year. Rainfall events are less often and more violent, extreme, you know, 100, 200 mils in a day and crazy sort of events like that are becoming more often. We're in La Nina cycle at the moment, so it is a cooler and wetter cycle, which usually lasts around 2 years. So I'm not seeing personally, I've only been back in Australia for a bit over a year now, but I'm not seeing, you know, quite the challenge in my face at the moment. I know it's there in the background. As you probably would have seen, you know, there were all the bushfires that covered half of Australia at the start of 2020. And, you know, it's a combination of climate change and what the human beings are doing to the planet. You know, the more that we cement the coastlines, there's nowhere for the rainwater to get absorbed, so it all goes back out to sea, and that changes all the weather patterns. And, you know, there's a lot of things that go into it. And, you know, I think from our perspective, you know, being biodynamic and organic is sort of the beginning of what we can do. It's definitely not going to be the answer, but the more that our vines are self-reliant and resistant to intervention and need less water, we're using a lot of technology now for irrigation, so we're really reducing the amount of water and putting water on really at the critical times and not wasting water, those sort of things, recycling wastewater and all that sort of stuff. Yeah, you know, I think it's difficult to see what the answer is to future-proof, I suppose. It could be diversifying where you've got vineyards, which we already, you know, do have quite a few different vineyard sites. So that allows us, you know, a little bit of security in the event of, you know, severe hailstorms and things like that that can be quite localised. You know, maybe in the future that might be, you know, deciding to buy some vineyards further south in South Australia or in another sort of area. You know, these are discussions that we are starting to have.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, okay, I can definitely see how that would make a difference. You know, you could find those slightly cooler climates or cooler areas that you can be within your local proximity or as much as you can, but kind of, yeah. What about you, Rod? I mean, how's it affecting you?
Look, I'm standing here sort of 10% into harvest on the 24th of February, where we don't normally start until about the 10th of March. So it's the harvest dates come forward, bud bursters come forward. But I think Ashleigh's point is a really good one about resilience in the vineyard. Like, we dry farm about half of the vineyards that we grow, so our own estate grown stuff. And the increase in the ability of our soils through organic farming to hold water and release it as it needs it and all that sort of stuff, and manage rainfall events is the volatility that Ashleigh's talking about locally. That's what we're seeing is the sort of impact of global warming at the moment. But gee, you'd be like, New Zealand's an island. We're pretty narrow and we're quite long, and so most of our weather comes across from Australia and blows from the west to the east. And occasionally we get a big southerly come up and it's super cold, and we get the odd front. But our weather's always volatile. We've got a temperate climate. We've got a temperate, cool climate, but our weather's always volatile because we're a skinny island. We've got that in common with the UK, I guess. Yeah. And so the weather events are less obvious to us here, but there has the last couple of seasons. When I was first getting into it, we had Pinatubo, and it was 92, 93, 91, 92, 93 around there. Pinatubo, and that was really tough for us. That was cold and cloudy, and then we had 10 years where we got frosts, really bad frosts, and everyone bought frost fans, and then that stopped. We don't get the same sort of frost that we're getting now. So it's just not easy being a farmer.
Exactly that. Growing something and harvesting something and looking up at the sky and praying half the time is kind of quite a challenge, I imagine. But let's just I'll ask one more question to you, and then we'll try. Have you got your wines, the wines and all that kind of jazz?
Got the wines.
So a dream region to make wine for a vintage. You're going to be quite biased about this, Ashleigh, I think, given the fact that you've been in quite a dreamy region making wine for like 11 years. But let's isolate that and move that away. You can't choose that, and you can't choose where you do stuff at the moment. Where would be a dream region to make wine for a vintage?
There's a little island between Sicily and Tunisia called Pantelleria, and I'd love to go there and do a vintage. It's closer to Africa than it is to Europe. It's on the extreme. Grape growing is ground covering, bush vines. They do mostly a passito from Zibibo and Moscato style varieties, but they also make a bit of white and red table wine as well. And I just think it'd be a fabulous place to, in the middle of nowhere, isolated, and see the challenges of making wine where, you can't just call up a technician when your press breaks down and all that sort of stuff. And I think, it'd be a place where, as we talked about earlier, with that sort of conviviality and community and all that sort of thing, that I think would be a fantastic experience.
Cool. Beat that, Rod.
Can't watch Ashleigh. Thanks. That sounds wicked. I want to go there.
We'll go together.
Yeah, right on. Yeah, that'll do me. Seriously, I got nothing.
Okay, no, that's cool. That's cool. Right, let's go to your wines. Let's go to your wines, and let's. I've got a question for you. So, if you want to grab the wines, okay, and I want you to. If we start off with. Ashleigh, if you want to try, you've got two wines from Rod, I think, haven't you?
Yes, I do.
Right. And what did you choose again? So you chose the
Sauvignon Blanc.
Sauvignon Blanc. And this, was it the Syrah?
Yeah.
And the Syrah.
If a man was smart, he would have the same wine. Hang on.
We've got both of those.
Cool. So feel free to not try them yet. Crack them open. Try them. Point fingers at Rod. Tell him he's useless. Can't do it. He doesn't know what he's doing. He's got his organoleptic flavours all wrong and all that kind of jazz.
He's gone, so we can say whatever we want.
Exactly. That's why he's gone. He's actually listening off screen. I'm sure he is.
Yeah.
Rod, I want you to answer. I want you to just explain to these guys here why you chose the wines that they're drinking, and what story does that tell about your winery and your region? Okay.
So the two wines we've chosen both from the same range that you guys have got in the UK, and we chose Sauvignon Blanc because what else would we choose, you know? We're a New Zealand winery, but what we set out to do with the Wild Song, this comes from oh no, we're not into that, are we? We're talking about why we chose these wines. We chose them because we think they're part of that journey down a road less travelled in terms of New Zealand Sauvignon Blanc and Syrah, where they're a little more textural and funky. It's not about big, exuberant, pungent fruit. We love aromatics and we love purity and stuff, but these wines are more subdued and interesting and you know, worth pondering. I think that's probably the way that I can best describe it. Does
it tell a particular story, do you think, about the region you're making the wines in? You know, from a kind of, you know,
from a flavour profile. Yeah, from a flavour profile point of view, definitely. So this is Sauvignon Blanc grown in a warmer climate within the New Zealand context. So you know, the wines Sauvignon Blancs you see from New Zealand are pungent, they're tropical. There's gooseberry, you know, capsicum, cutgrass, a little bit of tropical pineapple, whereas wines from Hawke's Bay are more Bordeaux like, with Sancerre maybe, you know, on a good day, where there's grapefruit and white peach and lime and blossom and more slaty, more chalky, more you know, the catch-all mineral. That there's they're just much whiter. They're much more white and golden than they are green, you know, and we love that. Like, I love talking about wine in terms of colours. I think it helps me imagine what I'm putting in my mouth, or how I just, you know, when I put something in my mouth, it's easy to describe the colours of it. And for me, it's that pale lemon, grapefruity thing rather than golden peach and nectarine sort of flavours. And so because of our climate, so this is off an old river terrace, getting up into the hills a bit. So we're at about 150 metres altitude up there, which isn't heaps, but it does have make it a big difference in terms of the nighttime temperature. But Hawke's Bay compared to Marlborough, the acidity is relatively low for a New Zealand Sauvignon. And the other character that you get in these sometimes is this beautiful, almost like a crushed fennel bulb kind of dill character. That's kind of herbal, but it still holds in that kind of more golden end of the spectrum. So it's New Zealand Sauvignon, but it's not as pungent as people expect. It's more textural than people expect, and it's kind of more chalky.
So bloody refreshing to nose in a New Zealand Sauvignon Blanc that doesn't have that green, screaming green cat box hedge, cat wee kind of thing going on that, you know, a lot of the commercial wines do, and you know, I get that some people love that, but that is just, as you hit the nail on the head, it's just screaming white peach, and on the palate you do get some of that sort of fennel seed character. It's beautiful.
Rod, what's the RRP in New Zealand on this wine? What's the cellar door price for this?
So we would be around $27.95, just under $30 for this New Zealand.
Great. It's delicious, man.
And, yeah, the
It's exactly how you
texture,
described it.
beautiful texture. You know,
Thank
it doesn't
you.
just disappear down, you know, straight down the middle. It's sort of really like sort of clouds rolling across the sky, sort of moves out to the sides of your palate. Beautiful.
Yeah, it's been a favourite of mine actually for a little while since we've introduced this, really, because of all those. I've had some memorable experiences of friends who live in the kind of Entre-deux-Mers region in France, and all we drank was just Semillon Sauvignon blends, and were the ones that were more Sauvignon and had a touch of Semillon. They're just kind of like golden, and they've got that kind of real just delicious character to them, making them food friendly and just like aperitif friendly and just like multi versatile, and just like that. Just it reminds me of that in a bit much more of a kind of honest fashion. It's kind of like there's a real kind of like, because of the kind of way in which, because we know you and because we worked with you, Rod, it's kind of like we understand what's behind the label a lot more, and it's kind of it's a great wine. It's a great range as well. But let's move on to yours. One of yours, actually, Ashleigh and Brian. So I think you've got Grenache and the Quandong Farm. Is that right?
Yeah, I think so.
I believe so. I hope so.
Rod will tell us what we got.
Depends what turned up there.
Yeah.
Quandong Farm, yeah. Probably the
try-
Grenache is a good one to start with.
Yeah, I was going to say, give the Grenache a whirl, Rod, and if you guys just want to replicate that scenario and just say, you know, why did you choose the wine, and what does its story tell you about the winery in the region? That'd be awesome. While he's kind of indulging himself.
Well, look, Grenache has been around in Australia for quite a long time, but, you know, it was really one of those varieties that was used because it can produce a lot of fruit, you know, massive bunches, high quantities, you know. I suppose probably in the 70s and stuff, when it was definitely all over the world, it was quantity over quality, and that was sort of blended a lot or used also for fortified wines, which were, you know, very big in Australia as well in the past, and then it disappeared for a couple of decades, really. You know, it was still around, but it wasn't on the forefront. You know, Shiraz really took over, especially in McLaren Vale, as the dominant variety. And it's probably been, the last 10 years maybe, that it's started to make a real comeback. It's really well suited to McLaren Vale. We've got, you know, really ancient soils with a lot of different rock formations under the soil at different sort of layers, but they can be quite shallow soils. And, you know, Grenache works really well here, mostly grown as bush vines, a little bit, you know, trellised as well, but it really is beautiful, especially up here where we are at Landcross. We've got these really deep red Terra Rossa shallow soils on sort of limestone bedrock. So, you know, they've got to really get down into the cracks of the rock, the roots, to get enough nutrients and things like that. And so the vigor is quite well balanced. But at the same time, it's, you know, they're beautiful, you know, can be, you know, quite beautiful floral, those sort of candy characters coming through in the wine, a bit of fairy floss, you know, good acidity, but at the same time still got some structure as well. So I think, you know, they're quite versatile wines as well, like Rod's Sauvignon Blanc, that you can either have, you know, with or without food, I think can work quite well.
Yeah.
And additionally on that, James Halliday has been a driver behind identifying McLaren Vale as the premier and best Grenache growing region. He hosts an annual Grenache challenge down here. So, you know, we feel that if we had to summarize the two varietals that define this region, it's Grenache and Shiraz. So hence why we chose these two as well.
Cool.
It's a very Rhone-like region. It's a very southern Rhone terroir here.
Yeah.
We're coastal. We have a Mediterranean coastal maritime climate. So when you think of, you know, Provence and the southern Rhone styles, this terroir suits that, hence the Grenache Syrah combination.
Yeah. What's your verdict, Rod? What do you reckon to the Grenache?
Rubbish.
Amazing.
Yeah, exactly. Thank you.
The first thing that strikes you is the perfume is just beautiful. Like, it's really floral and scented, and talk about florals going into candy, and that's kind of 100% it. But it's not perfume stupid. It's not perfumed like sickly. It's just got this beautiful, it starts off as floral and then goes into something more, slightly more savoury and interesting, And then on the palate, first mouthful was like just this beautiful rounded texture. But you can see, like, I had a quick look on the back, vegan friendly, so no eggs or anything. That polish is just coming from like,
absolutely no fining products used in any of our wines anymore, actually.
Yeah. So the texture that's there is just this beautiful, just mouth filling and plump, and then it comes through slightly on the finish with a slightly cranky kind of. It's at that point you think it would just be beautiful with a bit of salami or a bit of, something to sort of just make the most of what's there. It's this beautiful, and now it's just gone into this mouth coating, kind of lovely, fresh. Almost you get into, it's taken a whole other dimension in terms of. Almost like kind of like a black plum, but it's more like there's something clovey about it as well. It's really nice.
Yeah, there is that sort of spice, herbal character that comes through at the end, which really just gives it another layer, I think.
Right.
So there's a whole bunch in there, and then it's aged in sort of older 500 litre puncheons, and pretty simple winemaking, really.
Let's both. What I'm going to do now with your next wines, because I think that one, yours is Syrah, Rod, and yours is Shiraz, isn't it? So let's crack them open at the same time and let's try them both at the same time, and then we can just we've got about 5 or so more minutes to kind of dwell on the Syrah Shiraz scenario, and then I've got a last little bit which I'm going to give you simple choice answers on about 10 questions. Simple, one or the other kind of thing. And then that'll be it, basically.
Like every Kiwi's dream to be lining up their Syrah against a Aussie Shiraz.
Yeah.
Smell that pepper.
Yeah, it's
beautiful.
Nice,
So you got the Kwandong Farm in your glass, Rod, haven't you? And you've got the
Oh wow. Yeah.
Nice.
There's more than the same. There is different, eh?
Yeah. Yep.
What are you laughing about? Someone making faces.
Ben Paxton, you want to say hi to Ben?
Ben Paxton is being a little bit funny behind the camera.
Is he wearing an all black shirt?
Talking about rugby, I'll just give you a little snippet of my career. I took up playing rugby at 26 in Italy, and ended up being president of one of the first women's rugby team in the region where I worked in Montepulciano.
Wow.
So there you go.
So basically,
that's a hard ass taking up rugby at 26.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Bad idea. Very bad idea.
Yeah.
Get straight onto the committee and out of the playing team. Was that the idea?
Became a ref after 3 matches.
Yeah. It's brutal.
So, what's your
absolutely delicious?
What's your verdict on the Kwandong? Tell us a couple of snippets about what you think of that Kwandong, and you guys can tell him what you think. Well, tell us about that product. Okay.
Yeah, so I'm instantly whacked by the there's more the same than there is different aspect of it in terms of texturally the similar, and ours is in that cooler climate like black pepper and elevated florals, but there's also an earthiness about it, like a reduction that you get with Syrah, especially when it's young, and a which gives it this kind of earthy, coaly kind of character. Whereas the I reckon the Paxton's slightly more, it's fresher, still has that same beautiful texture. The weight, like the feel of it in the mouth, is like it's not heavy, it's not dense versus lighter body. That kind of like ours has a higher acidity, but it's from a way it feels in your mouth, it's about the same. Yeah, like I'm really.
Right. Is this the same price? Are these two wines line priced, or is the Syrah a different price?
The Syrah would be a little bit more expensive. This would be low 30s, I think. Yeah, low to mid 30s.
Yeah. 2019, I see. So
2019. What was the vintage like?
2019 was the first of three really kind of we call hayride vintages. Like this is the first tricky vintage we've had for 3 years. It's 19 was hot and dry and long, wet before Christmas, dry after. We picked later in the season. This comes from a block. This was our first organic Syrah block. So this was 2014. We put it into conversion. So what's that? 2017. It was fully certified, and so 18, 19. It was starting to hit its straps a bit.
Funnily enough, the Kwandong farm is as well our first vineyard that was converted into biodynamic. So that was sort of the first trial run, and then everything else got converted after that, if I'm remembering correctly.
That's correct.
Just the pepper in this is it's pungent and dominating, but not in a way that sort of hides everything else. There's just all these other beautiful, intricate sort of almost lavender and violet, no, not quite violet, I think more sort of almost dried lavender or thyme flowers, those sort of couple of sort of Mediterranean brambly kind of herbs.
Yep.
Right. Okay, so here we go. So what, while you're enjoying that, the Syrah Shiraz combo, I'm going to give you these quick fire questions. All right, it's a simple choice, one or the other. Okay, and that's I'm going to flick it to Rod and then to Ashleigh, and then we'll go through. So, Rod, ready. Bordeaux or Burgundy?
Burgundy.
Cool. Ashleigh, Bordeaux or Burgundy?
Burgundy.
Okay, I think I would have expected that answer from both of you. So we've already discussed wild yeast and commercial yeast, and we understand the difference in the two. French oak or American oak, Rod?
French.
Ashleigh?
French.
Hey, we're on the same page here. Rod, sherry or port?
Sherry.
Ashleigh?
That's just a mean thing to divide. I'm going to go port.
Oh, disagrees with me. Rod, whole bunch or destemmed?
Cool.
That's mean.
Destined, I guess.
Okay. Ashleigh?
I think if we're going like general overall for everything, it's got to be destemmed.
Okay, cool. And Rod, aperitif or digestif?
Aperitif.
Digestivo has to be.
I reckon I can answer this one for Rod. Single varietal or blend? It's clearly single varietal, isn't it?
Yeah.
And then Ashleigh, I'm guessing it's probably the same.
Single varietal. All for it.
All right. And right, barnyard or forest floor, Rod?
Forest floor.
Nice.
Yeah, let's hope for forest floor.
Yeah, exactly. I was going to say this is a safe bet. And how about aged red or aged white, Rod?
Aged red, probably.
Yeah.
I'm a sucker for a really old Riesling, so I'll have to go for aged white.
Cool, nice. And then dinner party or a Sunday lunch?
Dinner.
Dinner. Yeah, dinner.
Dinner's the winner. Blanc de Blanc or Blanc de Noir?
Blanc de Noir.
Blanc de Blanc.
Oh, I was betting on that one. Last couple, Poulet Fumé or Poulet Frisé?
Ooh.
Fume.
Fume for me too.
Oh, challenging. Old world versus new world. Come on then, last one.
You go
Is that
first.
for work related or
New
personal
world. We get to
preference?
have all the fun.
Exactly.
Good world. All day long.
Correct answer. Right. I think we're probably going to call it there because we're coming up to the time limit. So it's been a pleasure to have you guys for this little stint and hear your insightful opinions on what we've had to discuss. And I hope that was a pleasant little chit chat and a taste and a
Yeah, lots of fun getting together with another winemaker and having a three-way chat. It's a bit more interesting than just the back and forth. So yeah, really good fun.
Yeah.
We only skirted on a few. We missed a few things, but there's so much to discuss. You know, we could have probably spent the next 3 hours, quite frankly, just going through some stuff. But you guys are busy. You've got bio audits to do, haven't you?
Yeah, this is the most fun I've had on a Zoom call about wine. I promise. That's great. Wicked to meet you guys.
Cool.
Yeah, you too.
Your wines
Nice
are so
one.
good that I'm not spinning at 8:30 in the morning.
And he's already on his phone, like trying to order some off the website.
Hey,
Nice.
are these lightweight glass you're using as well?
Yeah.
Cool.
Yeah, we use the same.
Right, I'm going to stop it recording now. Thank you once again, guys.